Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Happy Monday. We've got some transactions around the league to discuss, plus one big question for the Southwest Division. Lots to dive into. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Keith Smith. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel. The season, it's almost here. Training camp's right around the corner. Hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications as well. Keith, you want to just start? I guess let's start with the saga of Isaac Okoro. That's the story that we've been following for a while now. The biggest name still out there in free agency, finally off the board, agreeing to a 3-year, $38 million deal with the Cavs. What did you think about the contract?
Yeah, I think it's fine for both sides. I feel a little bit better about it for the Cavs than Okoro. I think that's a pretty good number for him, about 12 million or so a year. We'll see what it comes down. It sounds like there's also maybe some of that's in bonuses. We haven't seen it. I don't think it's been officially signed yet. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's good for Cleveland. I think this is a good signing for them. Keep him in the mix. I think he is a good player. He's been an improved shooter every year he's been in the league. Really good defender. He's their best wing defender that they have on the team. So I think he's an important player in that respect. So yeah, I no issue at all with this contract. It does make Cleveland probably a little bit more expensive than they really want to be, but that's something they can deal with another deal or two if they need to down the line.
Now, this 3 years, 38, that's like roughly MLE money for Isaac Okoro. Like that's a pretty good deal. I like that deal for the Cavs. This is part of the reason why a lot of players don't like the NBPA. They don't like restricted free agency because Isaac Okoro was in a spot where he couldn't get an offer from another team because nobody was going to offer him money, knowing that the Cavs were just going to match it anyway. Why do their work for them? And then from the Cavs side, you're just going to wait it out until eventually you can sign a positive value contract. And I think that's exactly what this is. Now, as you said, we're still waiting. There could be. I would think we probably would have heard by now, but I suppose it's still possible that there's like a player option for the 3rd year or something like that coming in this. But overall, it's a good deal for the Cavs. This was the big question mark still hanging over them. And so now you get this done and you don't have to deal with these questions on media day coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, and that's always a good thing too. Yeah, everybody can just kind of come in. Cavs roster now essentially full. I don't know that they'll fill out their last roster spot just because they're basically a little into the tax, just a little bit under that first apron. And I think they'd rather stay a little bit into the tax and have the potential of getting out of the tax entirely with another trade if they could pull that off, because they also know they're going to be really expensive in the coming years, because Evan Mobley next season, he jumps from 11.2 million this year to 38.7 million. So that's that plus Jared Allen, plus Darius Garland, plus Donovan Mitchell, and Donovan Mitchell goes up almost 11 million. So we're in a spot where this Cavs team is going to be very expensive starting next season. So when you're only a little bit into the tax, I always think it's very smart to get out of it this year if you can. Stop that clock on being the repeater team and all that. If you can pull that off. So I think that's the important part here for Cleveland is, get Okoro in the fold. Then you can figure out the rest of this a little bit later down the line.
Yeah, exactly. And good that the Cavs now, they've got this question answered and off they go. All right, let's jump over to the Knicks. And the Knicks, they add Marcus Morris. Now he's on, from my understanding, this will be an Exhibit 9 contract from Marcus Morris. Meanwhile, Landry Shamet also signed to the Knicks. Keith, they don't have enough roster spots for all of this, right? I mean, the word out of New York was that Marcus Morris, the Knicks see him as a 4 or a stretch 5 now, and that he is going to legitimately compete for a roster spot. What's going on here for New York? How are all these pieces going to fit together?
Yeah, I think this is more of a let's get a look at guys sort of situation, and let's see what it looks like. Shamit's also on an Exhibit 9. They also have Chumo KK in for camp on an Exhibit 10. Just in case people were wondering, Exhibit 9 is what used to be called the old summer contract, which is a fully non-guaranteed contract, doesn't count towards the cap or the tax unless the player makes opening night. Exhibit 10 is essentially the same thing, but with some G League language added in. For a lot of Exhibit 10s, the guys can be converted to a two-way contract. In other players, they also get a bonus if they go play in the G League after being waived in the preseason. So for the Knicks, you're in a spot with Morris and Shamet. Let's take a look. No harm, no foul. If it doesn't work out and they don't want him, they waive them and move on very easily. If they do want to keep them around, you could keep one of these guys. Maybe they shed some salary in another way. The weird thing is the only guy on the roster who's not really like a part of the rotation or a developmental player for the Knicks is Keita Bates-Diop, who they got in the Mikal Bridges trade. So maybe you could move on from him and keep two players. So we'll see. But this is good for training camp. I still think, you could say Morris is a stretch 5 option, and that's probably what he is at this point. But I still think they're a little thin behind Mitchell Robinson, just given his injury history. So I would be looking to still add one more 5 in New York for sure.
And they've been linked to a few guys, some of the names that have popped up recently. I mean, really, their names have been popping up all summer, but it was guys like Walker Kessler, Robert Williams, Nick Richards, Jonas Valanciunas. Jonas, I know he signed with the Wizards, but everybody believes that the Wizards are going to move on from him at some point. Like they kind of signed him in order to trade him sometime, either this season or next season. But those are kind of the names that are out there, because I think the Knicks recognize too, like they never really replaced Isaiah Hartenstein. They haven't done that. And he was such a big piece for them, especially given Mitchell Robinson's injury history. So I do think eventually there's a move to get a true 5. I know you can kind of play Marcus Morris as a stretch 5, but this is not, okay, the box is checked and the Knicks are all set at the center position. No, I think they are still going to need to go look and see if they can find somebody to be a backup big behind Mitchell Robinson on this roster. And I think that move will come at some time before the trade deadline. They'll make that move. But again, those are kind of the names that have been out there that have been thrown around. I believe it was Ian Begley who had those. But again, Walker Kessler, Robert Williams, you had Nick Richards and Jonas Valanciunas as some names just to keep an eye on for New York.
Yeah, and the other thing too is they do seem committed to some minutes with Julius Randle as a small ball 5, which would be huge for them because that would open up just a lot of opportunities. They have to do something to clear the forward wing logjam, because right now you have Jalen Brunson's going to play a ton of minutes at the point. Whatever behind him is probably going to come in with Deuce McBride. And Tyler Kolek's a developmental guy. I think campaigns like the break glass in case of emergency veteran point guard. Then you've got a whole bunch of guys who overlap at positions between Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, the two guys that are probably going to the bench. Then you have Randall and Anunoby and Bridges, who are all going to likely start. But Tom Thibodeau, we know, we make the jokes all the time, but those jokes are grounded in reality. He likes to play his starters a lot of minutes. It's not 40, 45 minutes, but it's like 35, 38 minutes. And that's just not going to leave a ton of playing time. So unless they've managed to back him off that, which, by the way, would be huge for the Knicks if they could get Tibbs to, hey, play the starters like 30 to 35 minutes and use your depth because you have it. Then maybe that'd be in a good way. But if you could get Randall at the 5, that just opens up a few more minutes throughout the course of the lineup for other guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can, again, it would be huge if you could play small with Julius Randle on the 5, if they can get away with that. All right, let's jump over. We don't talk a ton about two-way guys, but Christian Koloko, joining the Lakers. I think this is, Lakers bias aside here, obviously, but it's just interesting that this is a guy who at one point was an early second-round pick just a couple of years ago, and then developed an issue with blood clots. And that's scary stuff. That's potentially life-threatening stuff. It looked like his playing days were over, and now he has an opportunity to make a comeback here with the Lakers, who are needing some help at the center position after losing Christian Wood due to knee surgery. Based on the projections, it sounds like December is probably the earliest we'll see him back on the floor. So, Keith, what do you think about Koloko and trying to restart his NBA career here with the Lakers?
Yeah, I think good spot for him. Good for the Lakers. He showed a lot in Toronto as a kind of a very raw big man, especially offensively. He's basically offensively, he was a catch and dunk guy, but defensively, he's big. Like he's a legit 7'1" or so. He's also fairly strong, and he is a pretty good rebounder and a really good shot blocker. If you go look at like his per minute numbers with the Raptors, they're really impressive. He just didn't play a lot. He only played like 13 minutes a game or something like that. So I know Toronto was in a spot where they were hopeful. All right, he's going to be our guy behind Jakob Poeltl. And I do kind of wonder, was there maybe after the blood clot stuff popped up, was there maybe a thought of, geez, maybe we could have moved on from Poeltl and plugged Koloko in as our starting five at some point and move forward that way. So this is, no pun intended, maybe a little, a huge pickup for the Lakers, who are just lacking size in a major way. Yeah. And it's important to know, too, your two-way players, you can get 50 games out of them. And the Lakers this year, they're not going to run into the whole don't have a full roster situation. They're going to have their full roster. So they'll get 50 games out of Koloko, presuming the fitness to play panel clears them. And my guess is if we're this far down the path, we know he's going to get cleared to play. Let's, fingers crossed that that's all behind him and he's okay. Yeah. That's the most important thing here. But he can play. This is a great pickup because then what will happen is as the roster develops throughout the course of the year, the Lakers can always convert him and they'll convert him. And even if it's a straight conversion to a 1-year deal, he'd be a restricted guy at the end of that. And they'd be able to control the process there a little bit. So this is a really good pickup for them. It's this is one of those important ones. Yeah, they lost Blake Hinson in the process, who's a kid I know they really liked and would have preferred to not lose. Wing shooters with size like that just don't really kind of come along all that often. He'll resurface somewhere else, but they had to do something to address size and get playable size. And my guess is he's going to be a two-way guy who logs maybe rotation minutes right from night one just because of the Lakers' big man situation around Anthony Davis.
Yeah, he'll have an opportunity now to go. It'll essentially be, I think we're going to have a training camp / preseason battle between Christian Koloko and Colin Castleton to see who was kind of the third string big on the Lakers behind AD and Jackson Hayes. And potentially Koloko, again, a very high second round pick. Is there rust? We'll have to wait and see. What does all of that look like? How is he now? And maybe there's the potential that he could become like a real backup option for the Lakers at the 5. As we said, a guy who had a lot of potential coming into the NBA, certainly a young player to watch. Unfortunately, it looked like his career was over due to this medical issue, and now he's back. And so obviously wish him the best. Unfortunate that Blake Hinson had to be let go in order to open up a two-way roster spot. But as you said, Keith, I'd be surprised if he doesn't pop up somewhere with another team and get that opportunity because he's 6'8", can shoot the ball. Those kind of guys are typically in high demand. So I'm sure he will land somewhere.
I'll say this too. Yeah. I would not be surprised if at some point Christian Koloko, if everything comes back the way it looked with Toronto 2 seasons ago, if he passes Jackson Hayes. I think he's just a better defensive player than Jackson Hayes is. Jackson Hayes really, I think, by the Lakers, so simplifying his role on offense, which was just run to the rim and then get offensive rebounds and don't just dunk it or lay it in. Like they kept it very simple for him. And I thought he was a really nice backup for them once he kind of that became his primary role behind AD. But just, I think Koloko offers that plus the defense and the rebounding. So I would not be surprised if he eventually could beat out Jackson Hayes. It just may take a little while. And then you are going to run into the whole, well, we do have to manage his games because we want to be careful because if there's not a conversion opportunity right away, you don't want to be in a spot where it's, all right, now you got to sit in the G League for a month because we have to wait until a roster spot opens up or something like that. So it'll be a little bit of a, we're going to have to play games here to try to, manage all of this, but they should be able to pull it off.
Now, one thing to keep in mind, too, as we've said, the Lakers don't have any roster spots. So if they do, let's say Koloko hits and everything works great, and maybe he becomes the backup to Anthony Davis, right? The Lakers would need to do something in order to convert him at some point. Now, they don't have to do it right now. They wouldn't have to do it tomorrow. They wouldn't have to do it next month. But at some point, they would have to convert him to a full roster spot once they hit that 50 games played. And in order to do that, they would have to clear somebody off of their books. So that would mean likely a trade would have to take place, because I'm sure they're not going to want to go over that second tier apron, which they're just under right now. So they would have to trade a player onto somebody else's roster, or perhaps just make some type of a consolidation trade or whatnot. So the Lakers would need to do something. They would have to make some type of a move in order to keep him once he hits that 50 games played mark. But we'll see. Again, we'll see how he does. And exciting return for Christian Koloko. All right, Keith. You want to jump over to our one big question segment?
Yeah, let's do it. Southwest Division today.
Southwest Division. Let's go. This is the way it finished up last season. Dallas Mavericks, New Orleans Pelicans, Houston Rockets, Memphis Grizzlies, San Antonio Spurs. Keith, I would say this is not the way it's going to finish this year. I know you are extremely high on the Memphis Grizzlies. I think I would put them either 1 or 2 here. Do you think the Grizzlies, I know you're very high on the Grizz. Do you have them ahead of the Mavs or behind the Mavs?
Just behind. I think Dallas will probably be the top team in the division. I think Dallas has a potential to win 5-6 more games this year than they did a year ago. Just their first half of the season was not great. Everything really came into focus for them at the trade deadline when they picked up PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Everybody just then everything just kind of fell into place for the Mavericks. I think Klay Thompson was a really good addition for them. So I've still got them as the best team in the division, but I do think the Grizzlies are the second best team. And I don't think the gap's like a 7-10 game margin, anything like that. I think it's more like maybe a 2 or 3 game margin. That's I've been kind of playing around with the standings and wins and losses and all that stuff over the last few days here. But that's about where I have them right now. So I think in the end, just move Memphis up to 2 and then bump the other teams down. Bump New Orleans down 1, Houston down 1. I like what San Antonio's doing. I'm just not ready to take them past anybody else in this division.
Yeah. Okay. So you would keep, I think that was my other question, is would you keep New Orleans ahead of Houston? I think that'll be interesting to watch play out. But let's start with the Mavs. What's your big question for Dallas?
Yeah, it's going to be, can Klay Thompson start all year? Because right now with the Mavs, if we'll see who starts out of Lively and Gafford, and then it looks like it'll probably be PJ Washington, Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, and Luka Doncic. Not a whole lot of defense in that group, especially on the perimeter. Klay Thompson's just not really that guy anymore. He is not somebody who's going to get down in a stance, stay in front of ball handlers, and do that. He was at his best the last couple of seasons defending opposing 4s. He still, I think, the bigger 3s he's okay on, but you've got to have guys who can cover for Luka and Kyrie, because as much as even when they're better, it still doesn't take them to the level of good. They're okay. But I think, that's my big thing. If Klay Thompson hits enough shots and can defend enough, he'll start all year. Otherwise, are they going to have to go to, my guess would be Najee Marshall? Not a bad backup plan. I like Najee Marshall a lot. Sure. And then do you turn Thompson into some form of super sub where, he just gets a lot of minutes and, gets a bunch of shots off your bench? Is that how it goes? So that's my big question for the Mavs.
I would imagine, and without no confirmation on this, but I would imagine that part of the Mavs pitch to Klay was, you're going to start.
I think so. Yeah.
I would assume that was part of the pitch for the Mavs. So I would assume they're going to give every opportunity for him to start and stick in that lineup. Yep. But you're right. They do have some pivot options there. I think my big question is this the year for Luka? Is this finally it? I mean, we've been having him as one of the guys who could win MVP last few. In fact, I think he's been my MVP pick the last 2 seasons in a row, just hasn't quite gotten over the hump. Is this the year that it finally happens? We know the talent is there. Does the addition of Klay as another shooter to kick out to, does that make the difference? Does that put the Mavs in that upper echelon for the entirety of the season rather than kind of a late season run? Because if you're up at the top for the majority of the season, that's going to win you more votes than just kind of a late season run that gets you into like the 4 seed or something like that. I do wonder if this is the year that we see Luka truly ascend and finally win that MVP.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Yeah, it's yeah, you're right. He's knocking on the door. That's historically that's been how it's kind of happened in the NBA, right? You knock on the door for a little bit, then you finally break through. I'm gonna guess there's gonna be some level of voter fatigue with the Embiid Jokic battle back and forth, and maybe that helps Luka as well, as long as he's in the as long as he's worthy, right? As long as he's worthy of it, I think he'll definitely pick up some votes that way. But yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, let's jump over. Let's just stay in order of the way they finished last season, and let's go to the New Orleans Pelicans. You started things off the Mavs. I'll start things off the Pels. Who's going to play center? I think that's the biggest question in New Orleans. Who is going to play center for this team? They have Daniel Tice, they have Yves Missi, but that's really it at the center position for New Orleans. Do the New Orleans Pelicans just say, you know what? We don't need a center. We're punting on the center position like Darvin Ham did midseason with guards. I don't like guards anymore. I'm just going to play wings. Do the Pelicans decide to punt on the center position and just play Zion as a 5? Small ball, we're going to put our 5 best players on the floor, regardless of position. And is that the path they go down? Or do we ultimately see a trade where they land somebody? Again, just like the Knicks, we talked about them. The same names are being linked to the Pels with the exception of Jonas Valanciunas for obvious reasons. But Walker Kessler, Nick Richards, these are all guys that the Pelicans could, should, and are interested in. So the big question for them, it's what do they do at the 5?
Yeah, I mean, mine's related to that, and it's just who goes to the bench and how does this resolve? Like, we've talked about it a ton already. We don't need to spend a bunch more time rehashing things we've already said on previous episodes, but you have 6 guys for 5 starting spots, and none of them are centers, so it's really 6 guys for 4 starting spots. That's Zion, Ingram, McCollum, Murray, Jones, and Murphy. All are starting level guys at this point. It's just going to be, what does that look like and how does it resolve itself? At this point, I'm going to assume we're not going to see a trade, because it would be kind of surprising here in the next couple of weeks ahead of training camp, but would not be the worst thing if they did get one done. And we have seen trades happen late the last couple of years, so maybe that's how it will go down. But yeah, I am very curious to watch this all play out. If nothing else, it should be a really good training camp battle in New Orleans, because there's a lot of guys that can play on this roster.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's jump over to, I guess next in line is the Houston Rockets. You want to kick that one off?
Yeah, so for this one, I'm going to go to kind of the heart of the show here, and it's what happens with extensions for Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun.
Oh, you took mine.
And it's really, are we, and there's 2 lines of thinking with this. It's either get it done just to get it done, and we've got our pieces and we're moving forward, or, well, I guess there's 3, or there is, well, let's see, Sengun, pretty solid, deserves an extension. My guess is there's an understanding there of, hey, we're going to take care of you, Tyrese Maxey style. We'd like to maybe have the flexibility to have some cap space, but either way, are we all in an agreement that we should wait? Great, let's go. But with Jalen Green, the question may be, hey, you played really well for a month and a half last year, and the rest of the season was not very good. So if you repeat that, we are happy to discuss a new contract, keep you here. He recently said in an interview he wants to stay in Houston long term. That's where he wants to be. Mm-hmm. I think Jalen Green may have really fine. It just took him a long time to play real basketball, like to play winning basketball. And once he kind of figured it out, I think then it all clicked for him. And I think that play late in last season was him taking off and going to a new level. And if it was, then I think we're in a spot where Houston probably wants to work something out with him. But can I see it for a couple months more? Then I feel good about it, and we'll talk this. So I don't think we're seeing either extension. Then the other option is, hey, we're not doing anything with Jalen Green. We're ready to move on, and we're going to postpone signing Şengün until after we do free agency this coming summer, much like Tyrese Maxey. And we're going to use a bunch of cap space and go chase upgrades and all sorts of stuff for this roster. So that's the kind of like, if I just, the heart of what this show is transaction, roster, cap stuff. The Rockets are fascinating right now, but it's right now for next summer. They can already be giving us some answers and some clues to what their plan may be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that that was going to be my big question: is what do they do with Şengün? What do they do with Jalen Green? I love Şengün's game. I've talked about that quite a bit. He's one of my favorite young bigs in the NBA. I'm really curious to see the way that all plays out. You know, I'm torn now that you've taken my option one question here for them. So I'm torn between something focused on Reed Sheppard and what he can mean for this team, given how great he looked in summer league. Does that translate over to the NBA regular season? Are we talking about not MVP, but rookie of the year candidate here in Reed Sheppard? But I think, as fun as it is to talk about Reed, the thing I'm most intrigued by, it's Steven Adams. What's going to happen here with Steven Adams? How many minutes does he get? Is there a comeback? Are there teams that are knocking on the Rockets' door wanting to trade for him if he shows that he's healthy? Do the Rockets just say, you know what, he fits the defensive schemes that we want? He sets a mean screen, and that's going to open up things for guys like Jalen Green, for guys like Fred VanVleet. How exactly do they deploy Steven Adams, and is he back to being 100%? That's a big question here, because he's kind of, I don't want to say they're forgotten, maybe nationally. I think a lot of people forget that Steven Adams is on the Rockets roster because we haven't seen him in so long. So what does he do for Houston? How do they deploy him? And then what does he become? Does he become the 1-2 punch at the center position long-term with Şengün? Are we talking trade around the trade deadline? How does all of that play out with him?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think with Steven Adams, and I'm going to use this to talk about Reed Sheppard and Amin Thompson too. I think there is a chance what the Rockets are looking at with Steven Adams is, as much as it's been billed on, we wanted to get another veteran here, we wanted to get somebody behind Şengün, wanted to get somebody who can really help. I think they're looking at it and saying, hey, when we go to our bench groups, man, this guy's going to free up Sheppard coming off screens. He's going to really open up Thompson. And what he may be able to do is lay a screen, kind of be that road grader, and give him a runway, right, to get downhill, to get to the rim where he does things best. Because I think one of the things the Rockets really want to know this season is our backcourt of the future looks like it's Thompson and Sheppard. How much into the future is that? Next year they can be our guys? Because that also helps answer the questions about, what do we do with Jalen Green? What do we do with Fred VanVleet, who they have a team option on? You know, what do we do there? And that second unit's also going to feature another couple young guys. Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore, too, are going to be there. So I think having Adams there, he becomes that veteran stabilizer for a bench that's full of really first and second year guys. Because Eason, as much as he's going into year 3, he missed a lot of last season. So he's really almost like a second-year guy. So you've got an extremely young bench, and I think they're going to be like, Adams is just the one who's going to be like, hey, settle it down. And in addition, somebody drops one of the kids when they go in for one of those big dunks or something, you better believe it's coming back your way on the other end of the floor.
Yep. Steven Adams, I think the only player that we've seen pick a player up to remove him from an altercation and just carry him off the floor like a child.
Yeah. I love this Rockets team. They're going to be like very heavy in my league pass viewing. I can already tell. The starting group is fun. The bench group is fun. Anybody who's listening to the show, I know Jabari Smith Jr. is one of my favorite players in the league. I think he is. I think there's a world where he is the best player on the Rockets in a couple years. And it's kind of like, whoa, like I didn't see that coming. And I love Şengün, too. I think he's outstanding. I just think there's a world where Jabari Smith Jr. just takes that leap. And all of a sudden, like everything clicks. He's attacking off the dribble. He's doing all the things he can do because I'm a huge fan of him. I love the kids. I love that like Eason and Whitmore just play with that just it's just that energy level. And then Thompson is just, what's he going to do? Like it might be crazy. Like it might be, dude, you just tried to throw it through the other 8 guys on the court, like to make a pass. Like that was ludicrous, but he's going to try stuff. He's a lot of fun. And then Reed Shepherd just, that kid can play. So I can't wait to watch this Houston team.
There's a lot of young talent here. As you're mentioning, guys, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. They've got that guy too. Oh yeah, they've got that guy. It's one after another after another. Really exciting team. All right, let's go over to Memphis. You kick things off with the Rockets. I'm going to go with the Grizzlies here. The Grizz for me, the big question, because I think, you see that record, 27-55 last season. That is not indicative of what they are as a team. That was the insanely injured Grizzlies. I think this is a very good team. I think they're ready to make a push in the Western Conference. My big question for them, is Zach Edey ready? Because he is going to get a big role. He's going to get minutes, and he's a rookie. I know he was an older rookie coming in. I know he's got a lot of experience at the college level, but still, there's going to be a lot that's going to be placed upon him, a lot that's going to be asked of him. He's going to have to be ready to play night in, night out for Memphis. It's a tall ask for a tall guy. I think he can do it. I'm excited for him, but this is a Grizzlies team that wants to go somewhere. And a lot of rookies are given the grace of, well, we're going to let you learn through playing. We're going to get through the growing pains. We're not worried about winning and losing right now. We were able to get you because we're a bad team and our trajectory is on the upswing, but we've got time to figure this out. That's not Memphis. They had the 9 pick because everybody was hurt last year. That's not what they really are as a team. They are ready to win right now. I hope that Zach Edey is also ready for that.
Yeah, I think I look forward to Memphis this season, at least to start the year. Keep everything very simple for Zach Edey.
Yeah.
Straight drop coverage on defense, but drop coverage in an aggressive way where it's you're going to drop, but then I want him challenging shots. People wondered, like, is he really a good shot blocker? Is it just because he was big in college? I think he is a good shot blocker. And I've probably said this on the show before, but in college, Purdue asked him to just play straight up because they couldn't have him off the court. Because when he was off the court, they weren't very good. So they did not want him getting into any kind of foul trouble ever. So they were really like, we just need you to be big. They're like around there. I think Memphis can say be big, but also be aggressive. Because if he gets in foul trouble, all right, we've got Santi Aldama, we've got Brandon Clark off the bench. Mm-hmm. We can slide Jaren Jackson Jr. over if we need to. They've got a lot of ways they can cover for him. So it's going to be very aggressive with that. And then offensively, it's just going to be finish around the rim. And he should almost walk into like 10 points, 8 rebounds every night just by being so big. Like, I think that'll happen. He has tremendous hands. I think you're going to see him play really well. So now my big question is, can Ja Morant get back to being the guy we all loved a couple seasons ago before the foolishness with the guns and the videos and all that ridiculous stuff? That the first one, fine, he's a young, dumb kid. The second time, dude, what are you doing? Like, you got to be smarter than that. That's, that was just stupid. And then I'm not going to hold the injury against him. My fear with Ja Morant is his style of play at his size is always going to lead to him missing 20, 25 games a year at least, just because he's going to get banged up. But if he can play 65, 70 games and be like electric in those games like he was, that this Memphis team can challenge for a final spot. Like, that's how good he was. Desmond Bane is terrific. You got to get him over his foot injuries. Hopefully he's back and fully ready to go. Jaren Jackson Jr. is really good. There's always going to be that question until it isn't. They have enough on the wing. I think Vince Williams Jr. really came forward in a big way. I think Marcus Smart's going to play a big role for this team he's going to have one of the weirder roles where he may start as the 3 and then function also as the backup point guard, which is just an odd way to play.
Yeah.
But I think this Memphis team's pretty loaded with talent. I think they're the kind of Memphis team, too, people in that city love. because they're just gonna be a bear to play against. They're gonna hit you. They're gonna be super physical.
I like that. A bear to play against.
Yeah, I didn't even mean that either. But they're just gonna be tough, man. But it almost none of it will fully matter if Ja can't get back to being a superstar like where he was headed a couple years ago.
Yeah, Ja definitely needs to get back on track and continue to be one of the bright young stars in the NBA. All right, Keith, I'll let you kick things off with our final team, and that is the San Antonio Wembanyamas. What's your big question for the Spurs?
Are the veteran guys they added enough to push them into something more than a team that's just better? Like, at a bare minimum, I think Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, improvement from the kids, yes, Wembanyama included, lifts them to 30-ish wins. But are those guys, can they lift them to a 20 win improvement and get them up around a 500 or better record, which would have them maybe challenging for a play-in tournament spot? If you can get them up to there, that changes everything, because then maybe it becomes, all right, maybe we think about roster building different, even moving forward, where now it's time to move one or two of these younger guys and get another veteran in here. I think that's what the Spurs are trying to find out. There's a portion of, you added Chris Paul, you're adding Harrison Barnes, because we just want to be a better team, even if it's not drastically better record-wise. We just want to play better basketball. We want our young guys in the right places. We want them learning from veteran players. But there's got to be a part that is, can we push the envelope a little bit here to being in a spot where, all right, we are ready. We're ready for more than what we thought. And I think it's going to be close, and that's going to be fun to watch develop throughout the course of the year.
Keith, I think here's an interesting question. If you are, and this is not my big question, but it's still an interesting thing to consider. If you got to be a fan of any specific team, your fandom is suddenly you are a free agent fan. Would you rather become a fan of the Houston Rockets, given their situation, or the San Antonio Spurs in the situation they are in, as both teams that are on the upswing?
The Spurs, because of Wemby.
Because of Wemby. He puts over because I think in totality, there's more young talent, I think, on the Rockets in totality than the Spurs, but the Spurs have that one guy.
Yeah, that's it. And it's been proven over and over and over again in the NBA. If you have the one guy, the other guy, you'll get the other guy. Let me rephrase. You'll have the opportunity to get the other guys. And then it becomes, do you get the other guys or not? Because if you do, you're going to be great. And the Spurs have shown us, when they have the one guy, they know what to do to get the rest, right? Like, and I realize it's been a down period for San Antonio. It's like the most down period they've ever seen. This team a few years ago, when their playoff streak snapped at 21 years in a row or whatever it was, they'd only gone 4 years without making the playoffs in history. They had 4 seasons that they didn't make the playoffs. And in one of those seasons, they got David Robinson. And in the other one of those seasons, they got Tim Duncan. Well, now I think we're up to like 6 or 7 years without making the playoffs. But still, that's not very many. And in half of them, you ended up with franchise-altering players. Robinson, Duncan, and now Wembanyama. So that's the only reason why. If you're telling me, who do I think will be better for the next 2-3 seasons, I'd probably pick the Rockets, just because I think they're closer to being better. But the Spurs are not far off that either, just because, Wembanyama, I'll be surprised if he's not an all-star this year. And then it'll be a decade or more until he's not an all-star again, probably 10, 15 years at least.
Yeah. No, I think that's the correct answer. I just think it's interesting when you look at how these two teams are built. All right, let me wrap things up with San Antonio here. And I know every time we talk about the Spurs, you have to talk about Wemby. You do. You just do, because he's that good. he's that impressive. But let me read you something, Keith. Let me read you something here. So, how about this stat line? 20 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds 37% from deep, 47% from the field, just 23 years old. You would think that that's a pretty damn good player, right? That's a pretty exciting player with some real upside in this league. And yet we're all kind of overlooking Devin Vassell. What can Devin Vassell be? Can he continue his ascent? Obviously, he had injury issues a couple of seasons ago. This past season, played in 68 games, not a perfectly healthy season, but this is, I think, a really good player. And I think that, he's the highest paid San Antonio Spur for right now. But I think all the talk about Wemby causes us to overlook how exciting Devin Vassell actually is. This is a very talented player that I always have a lot of fun watching. And I think his rise is one of the big question marks because, yes, Wemby's going to keep going to that next level, but can Devin Vassell become maybe the second guy or maybe the third guy on a championship caliber team? Can he become that for the San Antonio Spurs? Because I do think he's on that trajectory.
Yeah, we all focus on their Chris Paul edition as far as he'll make life easier for Wemby because he'll get him the ball in the right places. But it's not just Wemby. He's going to get Vassell the ball in the right spots. He's going to help Jeremy Sohan, going to help Keldon Johnson. He'll help Stephon Castle as he figures it out as a rookie. And then Harrison Barnes is going to help all of those forwards, Sohan and Johnson and others. Hey, this is some of the tricks of the trade to defend. These are some of the things you can do this way. But Devin Vassell, he is terrific already. And he's only going to get better. Like you said, he's still young, still improving. Efficiency is going up. Took a big leap as a passer, playmaker last year. Some of that came out of Spurs point guard situation was not great for a lot of the year. I like Trey Jones, but I like Trey Jones as a backup point guard. I think he can be a good backup point guard, kind of almost like a little bit lesser version of what his brother Tyus is. Just, really good backup point guard. But Vassell playing with Chris Paul, that's just going to really help him quite a bit just to get better looks, better open shots. Harrison Barnes, that'll help too. Harrison Barnes is sneakily, he's an okay screener, right? He had to be young in his career, playing with Curry and Thompson, and then playing with Luka for some years, and then playing in Sacramento with De'Aaron Fox the last couple of years. He has to know how to set pretty decent screens. I'm not going to say he's Steven Adams by any means. He's not, crunching guys to the floor, but he knows what to do with that. He's going to help. Vassell's, I think, in for a big year too, alongside Wembanyama. And I think you're right. The question is, can we start to find out next year is Wemby's our number one? That's done. That question's already answered. Is Devin Vassell the number two? And if he is, great. Or is he a number three and we got to go find a number two, develop a number two and figure it out? And if that's where it is, that's okay too. Because Devin Vassell his contract is perfectly fine for a guy who maybe is a third option.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Exciting team. You look at this division, Keith, the Southwest Division, there's fun teams to watch and any night. You want to tell me, hey, this team is playing, sign me up. You know what I mean? Like any of these five teams, they've got a game. I am in to watch that one. So all this is doing is it's just getting me more impatient for the season to start. The season to start. Fortunately, we're not that far away. Just a few more weeks, then we'll at least get preseason action and we'll be off and running. But that's the Southwest Division. Next show, we will head over to the Eastern Conference and start taking a look at those teams over there. But Keith, good Monday show and good way to start off the week, I think.
Yeah, I can't believe I completely forgot to say it on Front Office Friday. Front Office Friday was 3 weeks from the first preseason game. This Friday, we will be 2 weeks from Celtics Nuggets kicking off the preseason in Dubai, playing at 12 o'clock. So, when we're doing Front Office Friday, because we're generally somewhere we start around 12 or 1 or so, we'll be right in that window where the Celtics and Nuggets are playing. And they're not the only ones playing that night either. We've got the New Zealand Breakers are playing the Utah Jazz, and the Timberwolves are playing your Lakers that night too. Later that night. Go. So we're there. We're now in the window. Next week, training camps open for the Celtics and Nuggets. So like we're just about there. Like we are really closing in on training camps, and those are always fun. And then we'll have real basketball back here before we know it with the NBA. That's going to be incredible.
Yes. Yep. Can't wait. Can't wait. All right, everybody. All of that. More reason to subscribe to the channel if you're not a subscriber yet. Turn on those notifications as well. Apple Podcasts, Spotify listeners, make sure that you give us that rating and review. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.